everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here for a quick Friday Reads check-in. I just wanted to talk briefly about the books that I've been reading in the past week or so. Some of them are books that I'm continuing from previous weeks, and a few of them are new books that I started reading. First, I wanted to mention The Genus of Birds by Jennifer Ackerman. Jennifer Ackerman is not herself a bird scientist. She is a writer, and for this book she is presenting research that has been done by other people, biologists, ornithologists, researchers in other fields. But she started, I suppose, with the thesis that birds are intelligent creatures, trying to debunk the myth that bird-brained is based on anything that has to do with birds. And so she uses various criteria to define intelligence and shows how different species of birds, different strains of the avian species, how they display characteristics that show that they're intelligent in one way or another. And so she talks about the bird's brain weight relative to its body weight and size. She talks about the different compartments of a brain, the different parts of a brain, like the hippocampus versus the cognitive function. I don't know all the brain terms, but she shows how they have so many different characteristics that, in no uncertain terms, prove that birds are intelligent creatures. I am learning so much from this book. I'd like to put this in the hands of just anyone who has an interest in learning more about the world, learning more about birds. For a long time, I would go bird watching whenever I'd have an opportunity to visit the wilderness. And I'm fascinated by birds, but I don't know too much about them. So in this one, I learned about the homing characteristics of pigeons. I learned about the puzzle solving abilities of other strains of birds, and I can't remember all the different species because there are so many that are mentioned here. But I also learned about birds as artists, how they collect prizes from lots of places, how they can differentiate between colors and shapes, and how they distinguish between what they want in their nests and what they want to use to attract the opposite gender for mating purposes. I learned about the different songs that the different species have, but also how they're able to imitate others, how birds... There's just so much about this book. I recommend that everyone read this book, whether you're a nature lover or not. There's something in this book for everyone to enjoy. I'm not quite finished. I still have another maybe 20 pages or so left. Hopefully I'll finish this one over the weekend. But for now, I'm just still gushing about that. I'm also continuing the Splendid End of Bow by Erik Larson. I'm buddy reading this with Doris and Heidi and Patrice. And this is all about Winston Churchill's first year as Prime Minister of England. So this is the first year of the war between, well, World War II, but as it relates to the escalating tension between Britain and Germany. I love the way that Larson is presenting Churchill's character, but also giving us lots of snippets of not just opinion of the writer himself, but sharing information that was gleaned from diarists. A lot of people during this time kept diaries, kept journals, and as they related their experiences with Churchill, Larson is including some of those writings in here. So we get not just people's versions of who Churchill is, but we're also seeing a more complete picture of the lives that were being lived around Churchill. So we get like the life of his wife and his daughter and his son and daughter-in-law and his staff. We're learning a lot about what they were doing at the time when history was being recorded. So we're learning, we know what Churchill was doing and what he was writing and the memos that he was sharing with his staff. But we're also seeing how his staff lived their lives when they weren't in office. So I'm loving that. I'm loving the more complete picture that Larson is presenting, so that we're getting not just the war, because all of this 500 and something page is encompassing 1 year of history, but we're also getting a more complete history. And so I'm loving that. This is narrative nonfiction at its finest. I love that it's reading like a novel. it is a biography, but it is reading like just someone's version of someone else's life, like an oral storytelling experience. So I'm loving that. And then other things that, no, those are the only two books that I mentioned last week that I think I'm still reading. I started reading Augustown by Kei Miller. This is a Jamaican author. Well, he is from Jamaica, but he lives in England now. And this is one of his books. He's written much more. As a matter of fact, it says he is the author of 2 previous novels, several poetry collections, and Fair of Stones and Other Stories, which was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Best First Book. Kei Miller is pretty, what's the word? He has an impressive repertoire, and I'm loving this story. It is set in a fictional place named Augustown in Jamaica, but there is a real place called Augustown, 2 words as opposed to this 1 word moniker. But I love from the beginning, I posted on my Instagram last night that I love this book from the epigraph. This is a note from the Dictionary of Place Names in Jamaica. Augustown in the hills of St. Andrew, Jamaica is thought to have been named from the fact that freedom came to the enslaved people of this country on August morning, the 1st of August, 1838. Augustown later became notable because at this place a prophet whose name was Bedward arose. He had thousands of followers, but outdid himself when he proclaimed that he was God and could fly. Yeah. This book is rich with culture and history, and it's just rich. It is the kind of book that you just want to become really immersed in, even though not pleasant things are happening on the pages. We're learning about a family. A young boy who has dreadlocks goes to school, and his teacher cuts his hair because his teacher thinks that he's too shabby. He's not presenting himself as an upwardly mobile citizen. There is no way that this kid could thrive if he has locks. And so because he is going to the Christian school, even though this is a public school in Jamaica, the teacher takes offense that this Rastafarian child could sit in his class and learn, so he cuts his locks when he thinks he's misbehaving. And the kid comes home, and as they say in Jamaica, all hell broke loose. Because his mother has dreadlocks, and his grand aunt, who functions in the role of his grandmother, also has dreadlocks. They are Rasta people, and Rastafarians, there are people who have dreadlocks and there are people who are Rastafarians, and I am not the person who polices the difference, but the people in this book, they have dreadlocks, they are Rastafarians, and they have taken the vow where they don't shave their hair because it is a gift from God. And so to have this child, this 6-year-old child, to send him to school and he comes home without the locks that you've been growing and allowing him to grow for his whole life, that is a really big issue. And then of course we see the converse happening to another person in their community. This time it is an older man who's been taken into custody by the police officers, and they've also shaved his head. And so we're seeing this same storyline played out from 2 different perspectives. This is a really enthralling story. I'm going to be recommending this in my video that's going to come up soon, in which I'm going to share recommendations of books to participate in #Caribathon that is coming in June, which is all about reading books by Caribbean authors. So I want to finish this one so I can talk about it in my video, where I'm going to be highlighting Kei Miller, as well as other Jamaican authors and other authors of Caribbean descent, or authors who are living in the Caribbean as well. So for now, Augustown by Kei Miller, I am looking forward to telling you more about that when I'm finished. I also started, and I'm almost finished, listening to the audio version of How to Be an Antiracist by Ibram X. Kendi. The audiobook is read by the author, and this one is a candidate for this year's BookTube Prize in the nonfiction category, so I can't speak about it here. but I will say briefly that this is the author's discussion of racism in America, what racism means, and how quite frequently what we think of as being race blind is actually a version of racism. I will of course be talking about this when I do my wrap-up of my experience reading for the BookTube Prize, but for now, no opinions. That's just what the book is about. I also started reading another fiction book, Little Gods by Meng Jin, and this one is by an author of Asian descent. So I'm reading this one to participate in Asian Pacific Island Heritage Month. I'm also reading this as a buddy read with Columbus. Little Gods is one of those upside down stories where we know how the story ends and then we go through the beginning to try to get to that place where we reconcile what we know of the end with how we got there. Really interesting story about a young woman in China who, during the revolution, she loses her husband. She has a daughter, and so she has to survive for her child, and she eventually moves to the United States, raises her daughter in the United States, and when the daughter is just old enough pretty much to survive on her own, the mother dies, almost as though she has willed it, almost as though she was surviving on fumes for all this time, and she dies. And so the daughter is trying to understand who her mother was. The mother figure, she was a physicist, and so when we meet her, she is trying to explain herself with science terms. And this is something that I love. This is like an auto read for me in books. When a novel includes science principles, specifically physics principles, I'm automatically intrigued. Think A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, which is one of my all-time favorite reads, and Chemistry by Wiki Wang, which wasn't altogether great, but I was instantly attracted to that book just because of the title. But in this case, Little Gods, the main character, or is she the main character or is her daughter the main character? In any case, we have a young woman in science, a physicist, and I'm just so intrigued by her. I was just intrigued by when she asked another character, do you believe in time? And like that question just floored me, because how do you not believe in time? But remember when I used to do, for those of you who used to follow my channel a long time ago, I used to do a series called Book Links, where I would link every book that I was reading with the other book. In Little Gods, there is discussion about time, but in Augustown by Kei Miller, there's also a statement about time, which, like I said, did I tell you that this book instantly grabbed me? It said, "For here is the truth, each day contains much more than its own hours or minutes or seconds. In fact, it would be no exaggeration to say that every day contains all of history." I love that statement. I love when books include that little something that is supposed to make you think that the story is just larger than life, that it is encompassing like this big idea. And even if it doesn't deliver on that big idea, the fact that it just allows you to come out of the story just for a little bit and think about the application to the rest of life. I love that in Augustown, and I'm loving it in Little Gods by Meng Jin. That's her name. So those are the books that I'm reading right now. I hope to finish a couple of these before the end of the day. Hope to finish a couple more over the weekend, and sometime over the weekend I'm going to be sharing a video where I talk about Caribbean authors. Hope you'll join me for that one. For now, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you'll click the links down below. I have shared some links where you can support this channel. You can buy a book using my referral code. You can sign up to be a Patreon for my channel. I have a Patreon account. Or whatever you do to support the channel, give me a thumbs up, like this video, leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, what you've been reading this week, how your reading week, how your week in general has been, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I look forward to chatting with you down there, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.